Okay, this will be available for anyone who is interested. This is the state officer interest call, and I encourage you all at any time, like I mentioned, to please ask questions. I want to ensure that everyone is properly prepared for the application process and the slating process. I'll be looking at the documents, the officer application packet, to talk about the application, and then I will look at our interviewing materials to talk about the interviews and how to prepare for those. Those are not published. Those are not sent out. We give you a very general information about the actual interview slating process. So you will not receive what I'm talking about in writing. We will send out information to prepare you for the actual slating process, which happens in April. So first I want to talk about the application. There are several parts of the application, and Dylan can probably tell you that it is just the start of what it takes to be a state officer. There's a lot that goes into it, and it's pretty much a full-time job on top of life. So it is so rewarding. You gain so many new connections and new opportunities, but it is a lot of work. And so this application prepares you for that just a little bit for what you are applying to do. So first I'll stop and put Dylan on the spot and ask him to share the benefits of being a state officer and what it's meant to him to be a state officer.
Hello. I would just say that probably filling out the application is the easy part. The hard part comes when you have classes, when you have projects that are due the same day you have a visit halfway across the state. It may not seem like the application is easy now, but looking back, that was pretty easy. What it means for me is, well, let me tell you why I applied. My dad is the agent in Greene County, the 4-H agent in Greene County. That's not why I did it. I did it because of Haley Anderson. She had a whole lot of faith in me, the president, I guess 3 years ago now, and I believed her, so I applied, and I haven't regretted it for a minute. What keeps me going now through the late nights is being somebody else's Haley Anderson, seeing the people who are 2-3 years younger than me, seeing them be on calls, asking me questions. That's what keeps me going. So glad you all are here and asking questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Dylan. Can you talk a little bit about balancing the expectations that we have for you? Because it is very important that everyone who's applying to be a state officer does understand that there are extremely high expectations for our officers to meet, not just from me as the state contact for officers, but from Dr. Maines, the director of 4-H, as well as Melissa Miller, the executive director of the foundation, as well as all of the agents across the state. There are just expectations that are extremely high, and you're in a leadership role, and you mean a lot to Kentucky 4-H. So Dylan, can you kind of share some of your knowledge about how you've balanced those expectations? Is it what you expected? That sort of thing?
So kind of how I've balanced expectations. You have to be able to manage your time. If you let it, 4-H will consume every living moment of your life. And that's okay for a while, but eventually you want to see friends. Eventually you have to do that homework that's coming due very soon, and figuring out how you want to partition your time so that you meet your obligations as a state officer, so that you have friends, so that you have good grades. Having a balance of those three things is what you need to figure out going into this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dylan. I think another unexpected benefit of being a state officer is the amount of connections that you make across the state and across the United States, really, you will run into people way after you have served as an officer, and they'll remember you. And the networking opportunities that this provides is monumental. And many officers don't know that going in. They figure it out while they're in office, but then many years down the road, they look back and they realize, wow, I gained so much from this experience. Not only as a 4-H'er with great memories, I didn't just get to make a lasting impact on Kentucky 4-H, but I also gained professional skills as well. And that's the goal, that we hope that all of our state officers get to the point where they feel accomplished and that they can step into new jobs and new extracurriculars in college or in their careers or their jobs, and they feel prepared. So let's move on into the actual application. There are several parts of the application, as I mentioned. Part A is the candidate information sheet. Part B is a copy of the Clover Level 4-5, silver or gold application. You must have received this award previously or during the current year of the application. So you will be applying off of what you've applied for this year, for last year. So for the last program year. So those gold interviews will be happening this Saturday, and you should be able to know what you received by the time this application is due at the end of March. Part C is a professional resume. If you are on State Teen Council, you already have a resume prepared for this Part C. If you are not on State Teen Council, I'm sure one of the officers will be more than willing to help coach you through the process of making a professional resume. If you need assistance in making a professional resume, the Kentucky 4-H Workforce Preparation and Career Readiness Curriculum is a great resource, and you can ask your 4-H agent for that. But that professional resume is extremely important, so don't slack off on that. The people who judge your application will definitely look at that resume. Part D is your essay question. Part E is the biographical sketch and professional photo. This is extremely important, and this is one of my personal pet peeves, and you all are on this call, so you get to know this vital information. When you submit a professional photo, it is not a selfie. Those do not leave a good impression with the slating committee. So please, even if it is you ask your parents to go out and take a photo outside or maybe against a blank wall, that's better than a selfie. So please make sure that it is a professional photo. We want to make a great impression. Part F is a reference form, one from your 4-H agent. It must be your 4-H agent, a 4-H peer, a community member other than a 4-H agent. And then Part G is responsibilities, roles, expectations, and additional information. There are signatures that are needed on those forms. So for the actual application process, I'm going to go over each form. One huge tip that I have for you is to type your application. This is extremely important. If your application is not legible, you will not get a good score on your paper application. It is very important to know that we try to evaluate our candidates based on paper application and also in-person application. So this isn't all of your points, but it is very important because it's your very first impression to the slating committee. So I suggest that you type the application, and you can get your 4-H agent to help you with that, because that leaves a great impression if you can type it. So make sure you fill out all of the forms to the best of your ability. Make sure you don't leave anything out, because that, again, it goes into the points of your application. So that is the first Part A. If you're looking at the application with me, that's page 3. And then going into page 4, interest in office. So this is a little different. So you will check the office if you don't feel confident in your ability to serve in that office. So for example, the president has to attend Kentucky State Fair Board meetings. They have to attend Kentucky 4-H Foundation meetings. They have to do lots of speeches. So if you feel that you cannot make a state fair board you cannot make as many state fair board meetings as required, then you might not feel confident in applying for president. If you, for example, secretary, if you don't feel confident in taking minutes during state team council meetings, then you may not want to apply for secretary, and you can check that. However, it is extremely important that you realize that sometimes as leaders, other people see great qualities in us that we don't see in ourselves. So don't sell yourself short in this area, and check something that really you might have the qualities to serve in that position. And our goal, as I've mentioned before, is to make sure that you have all the resources that you need to be successful in whatever position you're slated in. So again, you do have the option to select if you're not confident in a position, but I'm sure Dylan, and I see Walter's on the call now too, they both can tell you that at any one point we call them to serve in various roles. And so it's very important to have a very well-rounded individual in our state officer positions. With that being said, it's also important to, since we want well-rounded individuals, you want to show that in your resume, in your essay, because we really need officers who are well-versed in 4-H, as well as any type of leadership position that we ask for them to do while they're serving as a state officer. The next part is the copy of your Clover Level 4-5 silver or gold application. Please make sure that you double check this, because we do look at your achievement application, and make sure that it's all up to date and that everything is there and it's legible, because we do look at this, because this is how we see how you've been involved in 4-H. We want state officers who have a well-rounded background, and it's completely fine if you have a lot in one area and not a lot in the other, but we want to see that you're making an effort to be involved in various things, whether it's in your community or through 4-H. And it's great to have officers who have all kinds of different backgrounds. So this year I know Dylan and Walter and Delaney and Jonna have all had very, very different 4-H experiences, and that's what makes them a great team. And this is how we see that on a paper, on the paper evaluation through your achievement application. Part C, your resume. I talked a little bit about this before. Please make sure that this is up to date and everything is spelt correctly, and that you use a proper format. So one piece of advice that I tell everyone, whether it's applying for state officer positions or if it is applying for a job, always have a package. So I know the templates are really cool and fun that you can find on Word, but sometimes they may not fit what you need. So make sure that even though it's a fun, cool looking template on Microsoft Word, make sure that it fits. And if it has a header, maybe what I think would be really outstanding is that header would be visible all the way through your application materials. So that same header would be on your essay, as well as your biographical sketch, and then your resume. So then we can see, hey, this person has it together. This professional package looks amazing, because that shows that you pay attention to details, and that's extremely important as a state officer. Okay, now moving on to the biographical sketch. You will include both a paper copy of this information as well as as emailing the sketch and picture as detailed below. So this is what we will put in the teen conference spotlight if you are successful and get slated for an officer position. This, again, we will use your headshot that you submitted, not your selfie, but your headshot that you submitted, your professional headshot. And whatever you put in this, I'm going to copy and paste it and put it directly into the spotlight. So, or I won't, the technology committee for State Teen Council or the marketing committee for State Teen Council will do that. So make sure that you proofread it because it will go and it will be published. And that's a good practice for anything that you send out, emails, anything like that in life in general, because it's easy just to forward something and you have misspelled things or you said something that you really didn't intend. So please make sure you proof that and that, that it shows what you want displayed for teen conference for the delegates who are voting for you. The last thing is that we want the references, part F, the references from a community member other than 4-H. So this can be guidance counselor, your youth minister, someone that at your job, a principal, a teacher. It can be anyone, as long as my suggestion is someone that who really knows you and knows your leadership ability and can give you a good reference. They will submit this directly to me at the state office, and they can either email it to me, that is on the form, or they can mail it to me in the mail. So ideally, they'll have that due to me by March 29th. So as a piece of advice, make sure that you give your recommenders at least 2 weeks to get that in, because the people that you're probably going to be asking are busy and we want to make sure that we respect their time. So give them plenty of time to write their recommendation. Additionally, your 4-H agent, it is expected that our state officers are in good standing with their county 4-H program. So you will have to have your county 4-H agent give a recommendation to you. And the very last question is if you're a good member in good standing, and they can say yes or no. And so it's extremely important that our 4-Hers are involved on the county level. Again, that's due by March 29th. And then finally, the peer recommendation. This can come from another member on a state board. So if you're on SET board, someone from SET board, or if you're on State Teen Council, someone from State Teen Council, a 4-Her that you've taught. It's completely fine if they're younger than you. Just make sure that that they are someone who understands and knows you well and can answer the questions on that recommendation form. Okay, I'm going to stop here and ask if there are any questions about the application so far, because we'll move into roles and responsibilities of each officer after this. Okay, Dylan or Walter, do either of you have advice as they're developing their state officer application, their packet?
I would definitely let multiple eyes look over it before you hit the go button. When you're writing maybe your speech, maybe have your English teacher go over it a couple times, because I'm real bad at simple grammar mistakes. I'll fix it in my head, but on the paper it's still wrong because that's just how my brain works. So I would definitely let someone else look at it before you say go.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same thing for me. Like for my stuff, I would have my ag teacher look over it, my English teacher, my history teacher, just get as many people as possible to read over your stuff to see if they can help you improve in any way.
Great, thank you. Those are really important pieces of advice. Thanks. I skipped over the essay part. I'm sorry. This essay is also extremely important because this is how we get to know you better and your writing style and your professionalism. So make sure, like Dylan and Walter both said, make sure you have someone proofread this for you and make sure you type this. There's nothing harder to read than handwritten. If you need to handwrite it, that's completely fine. Just make sure that it's legible and we can see it. But it does look really great if you have your matching header that matches your biographical sketch and your resume, and then you have your essay. And you answer the question, what are the most important characteristics of a state 4-H officer, and how are these reflected in you? This is extremely important. This is the time to brag about yourself and talk about yourself. Also, one piece of advice as you're looking at this essay and preparing for interviews, make sure that if you think that a certain characteristic is very important as a state officer, then make sure that you have an example and you share that example for you yourself. So, for example, if you think public speaking is an extremely important characteristic, you can talk about public speaking as a characteristic for a state officer to have, and then give an example about how you've conquered your public speaking fear and you spoke in front of elementary school assembly promoting 4-H. But make sure that you have specific examples how you have those characteristics, and that's completely fine to market yourself. That's what this is about. This is about you applying for a job essentially for Kentucky 4-H. And there are only 4 of them. So make sure you proofread that essay. If there are no questions about the meat of the application, I'm going to move on. No questions? No? Okay. So I'm going to go over the responsibility, roles, and expectations of each of the state officers. This is extremely important because you want to make sure as you are preparing your resume and you are preparing for the interview that you show you've done your homework, that you know that the Kentucky 4-H state president goes to Kentucky State Fair board meetings. You want to be knowledgeable that you know that the 4 officers are always present in the Kentucky Ag Tag photo with the commissioner. You want to know who the current commissioner is. You want to know who the director of Kentucky 4-H is. So make sure that you do your homework before you submit your application so you know what you're talking about, and then also as you prepare for your interview. So this portion of the application gives you a lot of information about what the state officers do. But again, I will say, and I'm sure Dylan and Walter can both say as well, that it's extremely important that you're flexible and you can pick up and do anyone's job at any time, because ultimately we're putting together a team and you need to be able to be a team player and give and take as you need to when you're working with a team. So that's important to know going into this process, that we ultimately are putting together a team, not just, we're not looking at these as individual. So make sure that you are showing how well versed you are in all of the different characteristics and responsibilities that we require of officers. So first, all the 4-H officers must support the overall mission of Kentucky 4-H. Make sure you know the mission. Serve as an ambassador for the Kentucky 4-H program at special events. You will be wearing that green jacket a lot. I'm sure that all officers in the past and the current officers can tell you that that green jacket is worn a lot and you need a lot of Febreze spray and taking it to the dry cleaners a lot. So that's extremely important. You will help plan state level 4-H events, 4-H teen conference, 4-H summit, leadership boot camp, all of those state level leadership events you have a major role in. You'll attend meetings and events as requested. You will have officer visits, not just for county visits, but our officers have had opportunities to visit outside organizations as well to help spread the 4-H mission. You will attend meetings and events as I requested. Complete the requirements of your position, so creating budget, creating reports for state teen council. The state 4-H president does a weekly or a monthly update, and the other officers help with that monthly update that goes to the foundation, goes to the Kentucky 4-H agents, as well as the primary sponsor, Kentucky Farm Bureau, just showing what the impact has been of that month of the officers. They will work with state and county 4-H staff members as requested. The officers will develop a program, a leadership program that they will offer to counties across the state to go and teach at different retreats or club meetings or 4-H council meetings. You, as an officer, will speak at conferences, banquets, and events. So all of our officers do lots of public speaking. Plan and prepare and run the state teen council meetings, and this is extremely important. As a state advisor, it is my goal that we prepare our officers well enough to be able to completely run the state teen council, and this is extremely important because that's 42 4-Hers depending on our officers to create and manage all of the internal operations and external operations of the state teen council. State officers will adhere to all deadlines, expectations, and rules, codes of conduct, code of conduct as established. We have extremely high expectations of our officers because you are a public figure for Kentucky 4-H, and you're seen at so many different events and on different publications and marketing materials. So you are, as an officer, you are a valuable piece of Kentucky 4-H. Like I've mentioned many times, this is a job. We look to our officers as ambassadors of the Kentucky 4-H program. You have a lot of input in our programming, and we value our Kentucky 4-H officers, as well as all of our 4-Hers, to give us valuable input on the direction of our programming. Specifically, the president will preside and participate at all meetings when required, speak at the State Fair Sale of Champions, which is now the Championship Drive. They will speak at the Farm Bureau annual meeting and other 4-H and non-4-H programs. They will serve as a member of the Kentucky 4-H Foundation for 2 years. So the first year will be on the board, and the second year will be as a past officer on the board. The vice president assumes the responsibility of the president, or assumes the duty of the president and they're absent. If the president leaves office, the vice president will assume this office. The vice president works with the committee chairs and the committee structure for the state teen council, and they will speak at 4-H and non-4-H programs as required. They are also in charge of the mentor-mentee program for the state teen council. The secretary records and maintains minutes, information, and correspondence for all meetings, conducts a secretary book audit at the end of their term that includes all of the meeting records, and now that's virtual. And then they'll speak at 4-H and non-4-H programs as required, and they also maintain the state teen council's involvement records, so how involved the members are. The treasurer manages all financial records, monies, bills, and payments of the state teen council, and there's a specific line item in the Kentucky 4-H Foundation that the treasurer is responsible for. They receive quarterly updates on that budget. They receive and handle all monies involved, and they are expected to follow the Kentucky 4-H Foundation money handling procedures. They conduct a treasurer's audit at the end of their term. They will create a budget and help the state teen council financial committee put together all the fundraisers for the council as well. And then they will speak at 4-H and non-4-H programs as required. Okay, I'm going to stop. And Dylan and Walter, is there anything that you would like to add into these responsibilities that on this paper, it's very overarching concepts, and there are lots of things that you have to do that are in between. So Dylan and Walter, is there anything you'd like to share about your experience?
For me, probably the two biggest things, well, three. is the treasurer's report. I get that. I talked to Miss Jessica Patterson at the foundation to make sure that's ready for every STC meeting. I do a budget that's prepared at the first meeting, working with the committees to figure out how much they expect to spend over the year and then how much we expect to make. And then the third big thing I do is an STC fundraiser. This year we did an email marketing campaign, made around $1,600. You don't have to do something as fancy as I did as the email marketing campaign. You can sell whatever if you want to. And someone on this call one day becomes treasurer, I'd be happy to work with you to maybe replicate that, but you don't have to do anything as fancy as what I did. At any time, like just because you're treasurer doesn't mean you'll never have the opportunity to speak in front of a crowd. I guess as a week or two ago, I spoke at the Kentucky County Clerks meeting. So just because you're treasurer doesn't mean you'll never have to speak in front of a large audience. It's not ever as much as the president or anybody else, but you will have the opportunity.
And Dylan will actually be speaking on behalf of Kentucky 4-H at the UK Ag Field Day in April as well. So he has had lots of speaking opportunities. So Walter, would you like to share anything?
Honestly, really what's on the paper just about covers, overarching what I do. A lot of it is getting in touch with the committee chairs usually throughout the year, seeing if they need anything or if I can do anything for them. Other than that, that's about it.
And Walter has had the opportunity as well to serve in Jana's role for the Kentucky State Fair Board. So he has made lots of connections through that because Jana could not attend because of class scheduling. So Walter has stepped in several times as the application mentions when the president was not able to fulfill those obligations because of school. Okay.
Would you like me to touch on that any?
Sure, if you want to give them kind of what the Kentucky State Fair Board does, why it's important that we get to have the opportunity to be a part of that.
So the Kentucky State Fair Board, basically, it isn't just a state fair board. It manages all of the fairgrounds and the Kentucky International Convention Center. It's really much more than just the 11 days in August. Usually it's one meeting per month usually, and really they all get together and just discuss what's going on, if there's any issues. I think I was at the September or October board meeting, and we just kind of discussed the successes of the fair and what improvements could be made. So they're always trying to improve the fair, but also other parts of the fairgrounds and convention center. I've had some great opportunities with that. Just the amount of people you get to meet is pretty incredible. I guess last week at the Farm Machinery Show, me and Dylan got to go to a reception, and Governor Bevin was there, and a lot of the state representatives were there, and it was really cool to hear some of their 4-H experiences and just how they're trying to help us any way they can. I also go to the State Board of Ag meetings, so that's where the ag side of 4-H comes in, and there's 4 meetings a year. They're quarterly. There's one this Friday, I think. Really, it's just it's Commissioner Quarles, his chief of staff, the state vet and deputy state vet, and then a couple ag business people across the state, and they just kind of get together and talk about what's going on and what issues we're facing, and just general things like that.
Thank you, Walter. I can also say that Delaney and Jonna have been working super hard as well on all of their obligations this year, and the time that they have to commit, all the officers have to commit to traveling is extremely important, and you need to note that as you are preparing to apply to state office. Okay. Are there any questions so far about the application process? No? Okay. I'm going to go over page number 6. It's additional information. It is possible that not all applicants submitted for an officer position will be granted an interview. This is important to know that if you don't spend time on your application, or even if you do spend time on your application, we appreciate you and we're so thankful that you've applied, but you may not be invited to an interview. And it's extremely important that you put your time and effort into your application, because this is the first impression that you're going to make with the slating committee. The slating committee, who will be in person interviewing, will also look at the applications and judge the applications. Likewise, not all interviewees will be slated for office. So just because you interviewed does not mean that you are guaranteed a position on the slate. As of the application deadline, all policies and procedures governing applicants and the slating process apply to all applicants. The state slating committee is empowered to make all final decisions concerning who will or will not be slated as candidates to run for office. The slating committee consists of 4-H agents, members of the Kentucky 4-H Foundation, past officers, the chair of the elections committee on the state team council, and state team council advisors. The up to 3 candidates for each office is the goal, but more or less may be placed for each by the committee. The slating committee includes present and immediate past officers, as I mentioned, 4-H youth development agents, state team council advisors, members of the election committee, and others as requested. Applicants will be asked to demonstrate their communication ability through several prepared speeches, impromptu speeches, and cold readings during their interview. The slating committee will have the right to seek answers to additional questions if necessary to make the best decision possible. During the reception, there will be other members present that will be meeting and greeting with the state officer candidates, applicants, and they will judge based on how well you work the room, your introduction, your handshake, your eye contact, your ability to make connections. And those members will be members of the slating committee, as well as additional people that we've invited from the university. The deliberations of the slating committee are confidential, and only the results of their decisions will be released. No information that is written or discussed will be released. It is strongly recommended that applicants have been a member of the State Teen Council and attended 4-H Teen Conference. They should have a thorough understanding of the Kentucky 4-H program and its many parts. It is not necessary to be a State Teen Council member. I do want to make sure that's clear, but it is also important to know that the state officers do run the State Teen Council. So if you're not part of the State Teen Council, you need to make sure that you touch base with the current state officers so you can learn more about the expectations of the State Teen Council and how the State Teen Council operates. Being a 4-H officer requires a strong level of trust and personal responsibility. These youth will often travel alone or with other teens and attend events without direct adult supervision. State officers should give a high priority to 4-H, maintain consistent academic standards, and have the support of their family and 4-H agents. They should have reliable transportation. A poor driving record or report of unsafe driving behaviors could result in the curtailment of activities or dismissal from office. They must follow all rules and guidelines associated with the application process, slating, and officer campaigning. Officers who are elected at the 4-H Teen Conference must attend the mandatory trainings held in the summer, and those are mandatory and expected that the state officers put those as top priority. Elected officers should remain active in their county program. They should not serve in the officer chair roles at any of the county or district level events. They must not be state or national officers in other programs during their officer term. And as a note, it is important that our officers are in the state of Kentucky at the time of serving for the office. You will sign as a 4-H member these expectations I've gone over. Your 4-H agent and then your parent or guardian will also sign these as well. Okay, are there any questions about the actual officer application? Okay, moving on to the slating interviews. So when we look at your application and the overall package, the scoring rubrics, 10% of your score will come from your application. 10% will come from an officer skills assessment. This officer skills assessment includes open-ended responses about how a committee functions, what budgets are, how to take secretary minutes, information about parliamentary procedure. So this officer skill assessment will be 10% of your overall score. The reception is 20%. This is how well you can meet and greet people, work the room, how well your handshake is, that first impression that you give, eye contact, how well you can make connections in conversation, and how well you can exit a conversation as well. Interview 1 will be 20%. That interview is leadership and communication, and there will also be interview questions. Interview 2 is your 4-H knowledge. That's 20%. There'll also be interview questions. And then the new portion of the application process this year is interview 3, which is a group interview. And it'll be focused on teamwork and evaluation of how well the different candidates work in a team. Applicants must receive a combined score of 80% or higher to be eligible for slating. However, receiving over an 80% does not guarantee the applicant will be slated. Those who apply are not guaranteed an interview, and those who interview are not guaranteed to be slated. In the application packet, there are possible interview questions, and I highly suggest that you go over those and you understand how to talk about yourself. Like I said earlier, you definitely want to make sure that you sell yourself. One good point of information that you may want to think about when you are preparing your professional package for the state office is that you need to know what qualities you have, what you're good at. Answering I don't know is never good. It's okay. Silence can be your friend. So if you need to stop and think about something before you answer, that's okay. Also know that the people that are on the slating committee are not there to scare you. They're there to get the best people in the positions, and that is equally beneficial for the individuals as well as the program, because ultimately they care about your experience and you too. In any interview, it's important to, like I said, know your qualities. So as you're going through the interview, think about what your qualities are as you're preparing for the interview, and always try to hit back to those qualities that you have. So maybe you're a great team player, you're responsible, and you are organized. So if those are your top 3 qualities, then make sure that you hit on those as often as you can. So then whenever you leave the room, the slating committee can be like, oh yeah, I remember that person. They told me that they were responsible, and I remember the story that they told about how they were able to take over a position that someone was not completing, and they ran the district retreat and it was successful with 100 people. So think about things that you're good at, and then think about concrete evidence as to why you're good at the things that you're good at. Know Kentucky 4-H. That's extremely important. Do your research, talk to your 4-H agent, talk to other 4-Hers, talk to your officers, talk to state team council members, talk to leadership board members. Be prepared to answer all types of questions about Kentucky 4-H and what we stand for. Know what our core curriculum areas are. Know what all of our team boards are. know about the extension system, so the history of the cooperative extension system, as well as how we're funded, and how our 4-H program operates. So what programs are offered on the state level, what type of programs are offered on the county level. For your speeches, one speech will be an impromptu speech, and what will happen is the applicant will get prompts, and you will have a few minutes to go over, well, you'll have 3 minutes exactly to develop your speech. And one thing that I would suggest is you probably will not have time to write the entire speech out word for word. What I would suggest is writing down notes, because you can take your notes in for the impromptu speech, writing down notes, bullet points of the points that you want to hit. So just like a good essay that you've learned to write in school, an opening, something catchy, your 3 points, discussing the prompt, and then the closing, a catchy closing that people will remember you. You won't have time to write an entire speech, so with your notes, write some keywords that you want to prepare. And I won't share the prompts with you, so everyone will be on the same playing field. The next part is your prepared speech. It's extremely important that you are prepared to give your prepared speech. This, you'll give a lot of prepared speech as a state officer, and it's not necessary to memorize this, but if you feel more confident in memorizing than having notes, then that's completely fine. But you will get judged based on how efficient you use your notes. So if you use them correctly, so if you look down and up, that's using your notes in a proper way. But if you're reading directly off of them, that's not okay. If you memorize it, make sure you know it. It's okay to have your notes if you need them, because there's nothing worse than getting up there and forgetting what you're going to say. So having notes is completely fine. Everyone, not everyone, but many people who give speeches always have notes. I always have to have notes if I'm giving a prepared speech. And then finally, the group interview. This will be, you will be placed in a group of individuals, other people, and that are applying, and you all will go through a group activity, and then you'll be asked processing questions at the end of that in that group setting. So we can evaluate how well you work with others, because like I mentioned, we're looking at you as an individual, but we're also looking at you as a team player, how well you can work with other people. Because at any point, we'll need to plug one state officer in for a responsibility that is actually the president's, or the secretary's, or the treasurer's. So we want to be able to evaluate how well you work on your feet, thinking, critical thinking, as well as how well you work with the team. And then the last portion, as I talked about earlier, is the actual packet, the officer assessment. So this is where you're going to need to know some common Robert Rules of Order. We're not looking for you to memorize the book, but know some of the common, how to run a meeting, how to take minutes, how to create a budget, know how a committee should operate. Also know facts about Kentucky 4-H, about the cooperative extension system. So that the assessment packet will assess your knowledge, your general knowledge about the overarching state officer program. All of these items together go in for your final score that will be looked at by the slating committee. And like mentioned, having an 80% is ideal. That's where we start, and then it's adjusted based on what happens the day of slating. Okay, I am going to stop talking, because I know I've talked a lot, and I am going to ask Dylan and Walter to share any information. Before I do that, I want to go over dress and appearance for slating. If you apply and you get selected to be slated, you will get a packet of information in email form. Everything is done through email. You'll get a packet of information in email form telling you the schedule of the day. Both the reception and the slating day are business professional, so a suit or a dress with a cardigan, or for the boys, a suit with a tie, or a shirt and tie and khakis, something that's going to really, you're going to want to dress to impress the slating committee, because we want to see how well you can carry yourself in a professional setting, because that's what that green jacket is. When you walk into a room, you're noticed in that green jacket, so we want to see how well you can carry yourself and the confidence that you have. So make sure you dress to impress. Make sure your heels are clean, your shoes don't have any mud on them, that all of your buttons are on your jacket, that you know how to tie a tie, that you've brushed your teeth and combed your hair. So make sure that is that you prepare yourself in that way. Additionally, make sure you don't have any dirt under your nails. And girls, make sure that your nails are not crazy. So I would highly suggest maybe not glitter or something crazy like that, but something more neutral. Dylan's laughing at me because we go over this every single year, and the boys always laugh at me because these are the things that people look at in a professional setting, and I just want to prepare you all for that. So make sure that you dress to impress. So again, okay, I'll stop. Dylan, Walter, do you have any words of wisdom or advice about the actual slating procedure?
So for slating, I'm not an extrovert. For slating, it requires you to have some level of social ability. So I thought to myself, how can I come into this prepared like I want to be? Well, you can't prepare for an impromptu speech, but you can practice for impromptu. So what I did was in FFA, I know, terrible, I took a goat speech. I did goat impromptu. And I told myself, if I can do a goat speech that I know nothing about goats and talk for 3 minutes, surely to goodness I can talk about 4-H that I know a whole lot about for 3 minutes. So that's how I attacked the impromptu. For the prepared speech, I thought, well, what if I forget this and under all this pressure? So what I did was memorize the speech, and then sit in my room with the TV blaring, imagining how funny I looked, trying to remember how to say that speech while the TV is going full force. And if I can do that with the TV going as loud as it can, there's nothing that can be going on in that room that's going to make me forget that speech. So that's how I attack those two. For the slating reception, you won't know everyone who's in there, but you know a few people for sure who will be in there. The Director of Cooperative Extension, Dr. Maines, Rachel, the officers. So you can prepare conversations that you're going to have with them before you get there, knowing the people that for sure will be in there, if that made any sense. So that there's things that you can do if you're not an extrovert to prepare yourself going into this. Know your 4-H history, beginning at the first moral act, the Hatch Act, second moral act, and I'm forgetting some since then. But know the important acts, know the important people in cooperative extension, and I have faith in you. You can do this.
Thank you. Walter?
Yeah, really, Dylan hit the nail on the head there with what he said about the speeches and stuff. My biggest advice is just be yourself. That's really what the slating committee wants to see, is who the true you is, why you want to be an officer. That's the biggest piece of advice I would have. Don't go in there changing yourself from what you've been involved in 4-H with, trying to think of a better image, because they want to see what your image is and how you can help the 4-H program.
Okay, we'll stop here and ask if anyone has any questions. Any questions? Anyone? No? Know that the state officers and I are there for you if you do have any questions after the call. We do wish you the very best of luck, and we are excited to see all the applications that we get. This is an exciting time for us because we get to see who the next leaders will be for the Kentucky 4-H program. Once you apply, you will receive information back within 2 weeks about if you will be eligible for slating, and you will get that packet of information to prepare yourself for the slating process. Please note that the application for office is due to me either in the mail or by email. It has to be in hand by March 29th. So make sure if you're going to mail it that you take plenty of time to make sure it gets to me. If you're sending it to the university, you need to make sure that you put Rachel Noble Kentucky 4-H, or it'll get lost in the university system. Or you can email it, which is a great way to send it to me as well. Again, best of luck. If anyone has any questions, I will wait just a little bit and answer those questions once we finish the recording. Thank you all so much.